Alrighty, YouTube, good morning to you guys here. I hope you guys are having a wonderful Monday, November 17th, 2025. And we got a lot of stuff to talk about here, a lot of different updates happening over the weekend here. And this will be a pretty fully lengthy video here today. We're going to walk through some severe weather both today, tomorrow, a little concerning severe weather threat across the Ohio Valley tomorrow, kind of starting to uptrend here over the last 24 hours that we're going to break down. We're also going to talk about this big polar Arctic air mass that's going to be coming down here, potentially a polar vortex collapse as we head into December. Both models, the GFS and the Euro, showing as well as some ensemble members showing it, and pretty much all of our teleconnections show it as well as we go towards the month of December, which is going to open the door for potential multiple rounds of winter weather. And then the severe weather will probably be a little bit more suppressed down toward the Gulf states as we head towards December. But we are going to have some severe weather this week. Also, some heavy rain this week that we're going to have to watch for across portions of Oklahoma, Texas, back all the way up into the lower Ohio Valley, maybe even across the Arctic as we head towards the end of the work week. So we're going to break all that down here in this video. As always, I appreciate you guys. And if you are new to the channel, if you will hit that subscribe button on the bottom of your screen, also turn on bell notifications there. You can hit the little bell notification icon and it turns on notifications when we go live, which we will have lots of live streams this week, and as well as video updates. So also, if you guys are not following me on all of my other socials, please make sure you do that as well. Discord and TikTok and Facebook and Insta and all of those. That's where I also post shorter term updates, unlike YouTube here where I post one long video every single day. So we'll go ahead and start here with our satellite imagery on what's going on here this afternoon here, or at least this morning, almost afternoon. And we've got a upper level low here kind of hanging out here, part of a shortwave trough. This is what's going to bring severe weather tonight across Missouri. Now, a marginal risk introduced here literally just minutes ago. And I'm getting more and more concerned about a warm frontal outflow boundary potential setup for tornadoes, wind, and hail across the I-65 corridor here, maybe even up towards the Ohio River Valley, along the Ohio River, I should say, down here towards southern Illinois, southern Indiana, northern Kentucky, maybe even western and central Kentucky here as we head towards tomorrow morning and tomorrow afternoon. A little bit of an uptrend with some tornado potential, wind, and hail potential, and we'll talk about what that looks like here in a minute. I do think the Storm Prediction Center will go marginal tomorrow and, maybe even get a slight risk potentially. So we'll see how that plays out tomorrow. Get a little bit excited sometimes when we get some weather in our backyard finally happening. But there's our upper level low. This is our little shortwave trough that's going to move across the picture here as we go towards the next 2 days. And then this is our major system right here that's going to be hanging out over California for the next day or two before it eventually ejects across Texas and Oklahoma as we go towards Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and eventually across Saturday and Sunday here. And that's going to bring multiple low to medium days of severe weather here. Still a lot of disorganization on how this week severe weather is going to unfold down there. That's why the Storm Prediction Center hasn't mentioned anything in terms of upgraded risk zones or anything like that, but we are starting to see some small bits and pieces come together on what that's going to look like. If you're up in the Northeast, still got that low pressure system up there kind of spinning, but if you're in the Southeast today, pretty nice day, some clouds in and around the area here, but not a lot going on, so that'll be one good thing to notice there. We'll go ahead and take a look here at our severe weather threat for today, and this, like as I mentioned, just added here just moments ago here, a marginal risk for severe weather later on tonight. This is mostly going to be a midnight to 6 o'clock in the morning event here across Missouri, so Springfield, we've got Jefferson here, all the way up towards southwestern portions of Illinois here, St. Louis, you're in that, Hannibal, you're in that. We are going to have to watch for an isolated 1 to 2 inch diameter hail threat, some 60-mile-per-hour winds, and you can never rule out an isolated tornado threat. I always say that because we actually had a couple nights ago a tornado down in southern PA in a marginal risk without a 2%. So I always like to tell you guys that just to be mindful of that. 2% or less than 2% tornado risk wind threat is at 5% here, and less than that, and the hail threat is at 5%. So that's something we're going to be watching. And then tomorrow seems to be a really interesting setup here, and I've been watching this and posting about this a lot this morning. I really want to watch southern Indiana, southern Illinois, western Kentucky, along the Ohio River tomorrow for a warm front that's going to be hanging out. And depending on how moisture plays out tomorrow and how convection early tomorrow morning plays out in this area, if we clear out and we get instability and shear in tomorrow, which we will have plentiful of both, I do think a couple of isolated brief week tornadoes, damaging winds, and hail will be possible. And that's in my backyard tomorrow. So we'll be watching out for that very closely here. We'll be keeping you guys updated for that. But a very interesting little setup tomorrow across this area. And it looks pretty decent. So we'll see how SPC plays it out. We'll see what happens on the models here. But something I'm watching heading towards tomorrow. I expect a marginal risk to more than likely be introduced in the day 2 outlook either today or at least by tonight for tomorrow's setup. So, and then we take a look at the day 3 outlook here. Not any severe weather expected right now, but I do expect something to probably be highlighted somewhere in here as we head towards like a marginal risk or something like that, headed towards day 3. And then also taking a look at day 4. Nothing highlighted yet, but the Storm Prediction Center talking about a potential 15% on Thursday, and then maybe even more severe weather between Friday and Saturday and Sunday of this coming up weekend here. So we've got a lot of little days of severe weather to watch here, and sometimes these little setups can be tricky. So just because it's a level 1 or a level 2 risk on the severe weather scale doesn't mean it's not impactful and can't cause problems. I always like to tell people that because we've had weird things happen in weird risk zones. So it's been a weird year in general for 2025 in terms of severe weather. We've had lots of high-end risk zones and lots of low-end risk zones do certain things. So just something we watch for here. But I want to go ahead and time out what's going to happen here this afternoon into tonight, because like I said, a really, really interesting setup here across the Ohio River Valley, especially tomorrow. But tonight we're going to have storms fire off after midnight. We're going to have this cold front, or this frontal boundary, kind of hang in here. You can see lots of rain and convection. I'm not really expecting a lot of severe weather up here with this. Could see some isolated hail up towards southwestern Illinois tonight. Not anything too crazy, but this is where we start to see those severe weather chances kind of ramp up here right around 3 to 4 o'clock in the morning tomorrow across central and eastern Missouri. And we're going to see most of these become hail and wind, but it does look to be, as they enter into Illinois with a little bit of instability, this will kind of be round one. This will potentially lay an outflow boundary down, or at least a boundary down tomorrow morning. And depending on how fast this moves out will depend on what happens tomorrow afternoon. But I do expect an additional wind and hail threat maybe early tomorrow morning across western Kentucky, southern Indiana, southern Illinois. But then look at this. We are going to have a warm front that's kind of hanging out here in place. And what that's going to do is allow for instability out of the southwest, and a decent amount of moisture we could see, and as well as overlapping with shear. We'll have lots of vertical and low level shear in the atmosphere tomorrow. So we could see ourselves a little sneaky tornado wind and hail threat tomorrow across the lower Ohio Valley. And believe it or not, I was actually pulling some interesting soundings earlier. I pulled a PDS sounding out of southern Illinois this morning, so that was a little bit something I was not expecting. But right around daytime heating tomorrow, it looks to be we're going to have a couple of these cells ripping right across the Ohio River Valley, literally along the valley here. So Owensboro, Evansville, up towards Louisville, up towards Salem, Indiana, along the Ohio River here tomorrow. We're really going to have to watch for the potential for a spin-up tornado or two in wind and hail. So this will be between about 3-4 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. Now, like I said, this has just been trending since last night, so I want to see some more trends with this afternoon. This is not quite yet set in stone on how this is going to play out, but it does look very, very decent for a decent little severe weather setup tomorrow across western Kentucky, southern Illinois, southern Indiana, and central Kentucky, maybe even to tomorrow evening. So we're going to keep you guys updated on that and see how that plays out. And if we look at instability just briefly on this, you can see we will have instability coming in tonight. So unlike typically when during severe weather events, we already have instability in place. This severe weather is going to be initiated overnight tonight due to instability, and we're actually going to have some pretty decent values going through overnight tonight and through tomorrow. And depending on how that plays out, like I said, early tomorrow morning and what happens after this could be a big factor on how tomorrow plays out. We could see 1,000 to 2,000 joules per kilogram of instability tomorrow, and that could allow for a pretty decent severe weather chance across this area tomorrow. So I'm definitely concerned watching this. I think a marginal is definitely going to be added here soon, if not maybe even a slight risk by the time we get towards tomorrow. So a very, very decent little setup here in terms of the instability. Now, moisture is another thing we have to look at just in terms of making sure that we're going to get storms. I think we will get storms tomorrow, but moisture may be a little bit of an issue, but it does look like here, at least on the recent trends, around 60-degree dew points, 61, 62, maybe even some mid 60s kind of reaching in there, but it's right along your warm front, cold front here where that shear is going to be the highest at for the potential for tornadoes, wind, and hail. So it's, like I said, something we're watching for, and then eventually that cold front will kind of clash down here and the warm front will shift down to the south. So something we're watching for very closely. And I mentioned those tornado parameters, guys. You got to have alerts on your phones tomorrow. I know this may be a low end day, but kind of just looking at the parameters tonight, we may have a little low end tornado risk overnight tonight, early into tomorrow morning, but take a look at this tomorrow afternoon. These are some pretty decent values coming in on the HRRR here this afternoon, and just kind of taking a sounding here. I don't think we're going to get a destructive tornado out of it, at least as of right now, but this is a little bit of an alarming sounding for tomorrow, at least on the HRRR. I do want to see trends this afternoon. I want to see 18Z data. I want to see OOZ data. I want to see clearly through tomorrow morning what things do and how things unfold tonight. But this is a little bit concerning in terms of how things could play out here in our backyard tomorrow. So we're going to be watching this very, very closely. We may be in coverage mode tomorrow for this, depending on how this plays out for us. You guys know how it is. I will give weather updates as always, but this is not something I was thinking, going to wake up to this morning to see at least of an uptrend of, and that just tells you how weather can change significantly. So we're going to be watching this very, very closely. We'll keep you guys updated on that if anything were to change, and if any risk zones or anything updates. As always, we'll keep you guys updated here. But I do want to go and talk about our global pattern. What's going to be happening here over the next couple of days here, and really next couple of weeks. We've got northwesterly flow hanging out over here across portions of the northeast, the Ohio Valley, this little clipper system that's going to move through with this shortwave trough. And like I said, tomorrow's little setup will be interesting to watch across the Ohio Valley. But this upper level low that's hanging down over here over California, bringing rain down there, some snow to the higher elevations, is what's going to bring our severe weather threat as we head towards Wednesday and Thursday. And the timing of this trough has gotten later and later and later over the last couple of days of ejecting. It doesn't even look like this is fully going to eject into Thursday night, into Friday evening. And it may time out to where our trough is not quite lined up with our instability axis. And what was looking like a really decent severe weather potential, maybe even outbreak a couple days ago, is no longer really looking like that. It's looking more of like a marginal slight risk day, which is still going to be impactful for a lot of people. But this is also turning into more of a messy, heavy rain setup. We will have some severe weather in this area, but it's not as high as I was expecting a couple days ago when we were talking about this. And that's just changes happen. Changes happen with the trough. The timing of things happen. That's how the weather works. You're not going to always be able to get it spot on the dot days down. And that's why we tell you guys to stay tuned for updates. But we are going to still watch for a pretty impactful trough here. There will be the threat for tornadoes, damaging winds, and hail, but I think most of this will also be heavy rainfall. And then watching into Friday, this trough's going to move across the Ohio Valley and down toward the deep south. And then eventually Saturday into Sunday, we're going to have to watch for another system potentially early next week that could come into the Gulf states down here toward the lower Arctic and into the southeast. And then after that, the Euromodel and the GFS both showing a major system at some point around Thanksgiving. This is something we're going to start to talk a lot more about here in the next couple of days, but a very, very interesting cross-country system, winter storm / severe weather setup coming as we get closer and closer to Thanksgiving. And I think the probabilities of seeing a central United States winter storm or severe weather event are very, very likely, at least as of right now, given what we're seeing on our ensembles and what our teleconnections are showing us and a bunch of other data coming in. So the timing of all of that, what that's going to look like, the snow, the severe weather setup, all of that still yet to be figured out because this is about 10 days out, but we are starting to get into the range here where we're starting to get an idea of, hey, this is going to be a pretty impactful storm, especially for travel for a lot of people going into Thanksgiving. So if you have travel plans, you want to stay tuned to the channel here, we'll keep you guys updated. After that, we're just going to have lots of cold air entering the United States, and that's going to be due to that polar vortex sending all of that cold air down here. And eventually, I think this will give it even colder air down here as we head into the month of December. So a lot of things to look at here over the next couple of days, a lot of things to watch over the next couple of days. We'll be very, very busy here on the channel as always. And then taking a look here at our temperature anomalies, staying pretty warm through much of the week here. Not a lot going to be happening in terms of, cold air or anything like that. Will stay pretty warm through most of really the next week and a half here. And then eventually, as we get toward, the Thanksgiving holiday season, here comes that cold clash of air. And this is where, like I said, below average temperatures with snowfall potentially right the day after Thanksgiving here. This is like a Thanksgiving post whiplash is what I like to call it here. It's sending all of this Arctic air that we've been talking about for days now all the way down here in the central and the eastern half of the United States. And that's going to cause a lot of impacts in terms of road conditions, traveling, all that stuff in general, even after Thanksgiving is over with. So this is what I like to say is welcome to winter, potentially on the way here officially with our first big setup here potentially coming. And like I said, we'll talk more about that in the streams and all of that here. I will have a live stream later on this afternoon, potentially 2 today for you guys as well. I do want to show you guys the instability here because this has gotten a little bit skirmish. The European a little bit better with instability, both you can see today and tomorrow with those severe weather threats that we're having for isolated severe today and tomorrow. And then we get into Wednesday, definitely some instability to work with on Wednesday. It's just the timing of that trough. We'll see how things play out on short range guidance once that starts to come in tomorrow. But going into Thursday here, this is where things get more interesting as we lose a lot of our instability. And a lot of times, though, I will say this. A lot of these global models can underdo on instability. That is a very, very good possibility. So we'll see how things shake out as we get closer to this event. But I still want to watch up here in this area for some isolated, maybe even a scattered severe weather as we head towards Friday. And then eventually, the European does have a little bit of instability hanging around here as we go into Saturday, Friday night into Saturday. So we may even have enough skinny cape here for a little warm sector, squall line potential setup here as we head towards Friday and Saturday. We'll keep you guys updated there. And then as we head towards Sunday and Monday, we'll be watching for that next system coming into Texas and Oklahoma. So a very, very busy week in front of us here on the channel, and we'll keep you guys updated with everything that's going to be happening. As always, I appreciate y'all for all the love and all the support here on these videos, and we'll keep you guys updated. As always, have a wonderful Monday and stay safe, guys.